Starting today, I'm going to live with my oldest son, his wife, and my grandchild. We don't need anyone else. That's how it was decided in the family meeting.
Judging by the tone of Kyle's voice, it didn't seem like he was joking.
I don't know who you are, but you need to get out of the house, old lady.
From now on, we're going to work together as a family, so make sure you leave soon. We don't have a room for you anyway.
His wife said this, waving her hand as if to shoo me away, mocking me. Even I felt my anger reaching a boiling point. But then I calmed down and, looking at the three of them, I let out a small laugh. Getting angry and rising to the bait of people like them would be ridiculous. Besides, I've been paying $3,300 for the household expenses, but they seem to have forgotten that. I wonder how they plan to manage after they kick me out. Fine, I'll divorce you, Kyle. I'll leave just as you told me. The three of them smirked, their faces contorting into disturbing grins. I turned away from them and left the living room, retreating to my own room.
Make sure you take all your junk with you. It's just trash to us anyway.
Kyle shouted from the living room. I didn't bother to respond and silently began packing up my belongings. My name is Sophia. I'm 65 years old. I married Kyle and worked part-time jobs here and there, but now I work from home while also being a housewife. The first time we met was when he chatted me up. I was a college student at the time. Kyle, who was 7 years older than me, approached me saying he'd fallen in love at first sight. I was wary since I'd never dated anyone before, and I kept avoiding him. But Kyle didn't give up and continued to approach me whenever we met. Sometimes we'd just say hi, and other times we'd chat if we had time. Though I always listened half-heartedly, he eventually seemed to realize that I wasn't interested, and he told me,
I never meant to bother you. I'm sorry if I made you uncomfortable.
That one sentence made me realize Kyle's genuine feelings, and I decided to give him a chance. Before long, I found myself drawn to him too. After we graduated from college, we got married and were blessed with a daughter, Nancy, and a son, Mike. Kyle loved kids, and he was very involved in raising our 2 children. We lived happily as a close-knit family. But that happiness didn't last long. When Mike started middle school, I took on a part-time job, and that's where I heard something unbelievable. It was a woman named Christina, who was a year older than me, and she was the one that told me. We were close in age and both had kids. She was straightforward and easy to get along with, so we became good friends. One day, we were leaving work together, and she mentioned,
By the way, I got picked up at the station here a long time ago.
it was the same station where I had met Kyle. I thought it was a strange coincidence that this was a pickup spot and listened as Christina continued.
My friend and a younger coworker got hit on by the same guy. It became a bit of a topic among our group. After watching him for a while, we realized he was hitting on lots of young girls.
No way. Someone like that really exists. That's incredible.
It's shocking, right? And he was only hitting on girls at least 5 years younger than him.
Christina laughed loudly, and I found myself laughing along with her.
According to rumors, he ended up marrying a young woman he picked up through flirting.
At that moment, I suddenly had a bad feeling. And somehow, I felt embarrassed about meeting Kyle here. But Kyle had fallen in love with me at first sight and happened to meet me here. He wasn't like one of those pickup guys. I wanted to believe that, but my hope was cruelly shattered.
On top of that, he tells everyone he fell in love at first sight. I feel so sorry for the woman who got tricked into marrying him.
Christina kept talking, but none of it registered in my mind. After realizing that the pickup guy was Kyle, I couldn't think about anything else. I felt utterly pathetic for believing Kyle's words and being completely deceived. Of course, I knew Christina didn't mean any harm. Christina didn't know that Kyle was my husband.
Sophia, you don't look well.
Christina asked me with concern as I remained silent. Oh, no, I'm fine. I was just thinking about what to make for dinner.
It's tough to think about dinner every day, isn't it? I'm wondering what to make too.
I said that just to change the subject, and luckily, the topic shifted. But after that, I couldn't stop thinking about it, and during my shift in the afternoon, I kept making mistakes. That evening, after dinner, and once the kids were asleep, I spoke to Kyle. Today, I heard something from a friend at work that's been bothering me.
Something bothering you? What is it?
Kyle listens to what I have to say. There's no way this kind, gentle husband could be a scummy guy who goes chatting up anyone. It would probably end up being a funny story. That's what I thought, but I needed to feel reassured, so I began speaking. You know that station where we met? Apparently, there's a guy who flirts with younger girls there, claiming he fell in love at first sight.
Really?
And that guy ended up marrying a woman he picked up there. I laughed after saying that, but Kyle didn't laugh. I just wanted to feel relieved, but the growing anxiety was suffocating me as I spoke, my voice trembling. It's just a coincidence, right? You fell in love with me at first sight, didn't you? My voice shook more than I expected. Then Kyle suddenly let out a chuckle. For a moment, I felt relieved.
Love at first sight? No way. You were just the only one who fell for it.
He laughed in front of me, who was trembling.
That friend of yours at work really said something unnecessary. You would have been happier not knowing.
That's so cruel. So, you tricked me into marrying you? Was your I love you just a lie? I couldn't help but raise my voice at Kyle, who continued to laugh as if it was all so funny. But Kyle, unconcerned with my feelings, delivered a final, hurtful blow.
It's on you for falling for it. Love? I wanted a young, naive girl to marry, so I chose you.
That single sentence was clear evidence that Kyle knew he had deceived me.
Well, someone like you would have ended up with a horrible guy anyway. You should be glad you got caught by me. I've got work tomorrow, so I'm going to bed.
And with that, he really did lie down on the bed. Sure, I was stupid, but there was no consolation for the shock I felt. I had believed I was loved, but the thought that it didn't matter who it was tore me apart. When we visited his parents to announce our marriage,
I'm so relieved he finally got married.
And to such a young woman.
I'm so happy.
his mother had said. I was under the impression that I was being praised, but it's clear now that Kyle must have been constantly pressured by his in-laws to get married. However, knowing this now doesn't change anything for me. Honestly, I no longer feel love for him, but our marriage isn't exactly on the rocks, and with our kids going through such sensitive times, I can't bring myself to go through with a divorce, even if I wanted to. I misunderstood his actions as love and got married, which only makes the reality all the more painful. But I told myself I just had to endure it. Still, as time passed, I was able to accept that the past is the past. Even though I don't have romantic feelings for Kyle anymore, we've built a life together as a family. After learning this truth, our relationship was never the same, and Kyle started avoiding me on his days off, spending time at the casino instead. But despite everything, I no longer feel the urge to divorce, and I've kept myself busy, even taking up remote work after quitting my part-time job. The kids grew up so quickly, both graduating from college and finding jobs locally. Nancy eventually married someone from her company, and she has kids of her own. Although they live far away and we don't see each other often, they're happy. The problem is Mike. After graduating from college, he found a job but quickly quit.
That place just wasn't for me. My boss kept piling all the work on me. The part-timers just gossip and are no help at all.
He kept complaining, and at first, I thought it was just a bad fit between him and the company or his boss. It must have been tough, Mike. I'm sure you'll find a company that suits you better. I supported his decision to find a new jobs. He eventually found another job, but soon quit again. And so it went. I've lost track of how many times he's changed jobs by the time he turned 30. As a mother, I wanted to be understanding, but quitting jobs so quickly made him seem like nothing but a spoiled brat.
Being a full-time employee just doesn't suit me. The responsibilities are too heavy, and the pay is lousy. I'm fine with part-time work. If the customers or HQ piss me off, I can just quit on the spot.
Mike finally came to terms with his situation and now jumps from one part-time job to another. Of course, that's not enough to cover his living expenses. He still lives at home, doesn't contribute to groceries or utilities, and seems to spend all his earnings as pocket money. Mike, you're over 30 now. You can't keep living like this forever. I've tried to reason with him several times. If you can't handle a full-time job, at least stick to one part-time job long enough to get a raise. Endurance is important too. But no matter how much I worry, it's like talking to a brick wall. As for Kyle, he's like,
Don't be so hard on him. He's our eldest son. We'll have to take care of him.
maybe that works for now. But isn't he worried about Mike's future?
You always understand me, Dad.
Mike leans on Kyle and has no intention of changing his part-time lifestyle. Then, out of nowhere, Mike announced that he's moving out at the age of 34. At first, I wondered what had gotten into him, but it turns out he's planning to get married. He even found a full-time job.
Actually, my girlfriend's pregnant, so I've got to step up.
That's what Mike said to me. I was really happy. Not only was Mike finally becoming independent, but I was relieved my son was getting married, and I was excited about the prospect of having a grandchild. Mike's fiancée is a woman named Emma, who's 7 years younger than him. With the same age difference as Kyle and me, Mike laughed, saying, "I guess the apple doesn't fall far from the tree." Emma was going to visit us for the first time.
Nice to meet you. Thank you for having me.
She brought some sweets that Kyle liked as a gift, probably Mike told her, and she was dressed neatly, leaving a good first impression. "Emma, we're looking forward to having you in the family." I greeted her with a smile, and she smiled back. But it wasn't a smile. I felt a sense of unease at the smirk that seemed to mock me, and I tilted my head in confusion. "Oh."
Oh, I'm sorry. I just remembered that story about falling in love at first sight.
A story about falling in love at first sight. I had no idea what they were talking about. But unlike me, both Kyle and Mike burst out laughing.
Oh yeah, it's that story about how Mom got tricked.
What, Mike? You already told her? I was going to tell her myself.
It was about how Kyle and I first met. I didn't even know Mike knew about it, let alone that he had shared it with Emma. I was so embarrassed that my face turned bright red, but at the same time, I felt a growing sense of dislike toward the three of them. Emma, with a triumphant grin, opened her mouth to speak to me.
There's no doubt that Mike loves me, so please don't worry about it.
Was that really something to say to someone she was meeting for the first time? Someone who was supposed to be her future mother-in-law? Or maybe she said it to assert her position since I would become her mother-in-law.
Emma, you're a funny girl. And beautiful too. You must be quite popular.
Dad, if I marry someone like her, you'd be relieved, right?
I'm glad to hear that. I'll do my best to become a wonderful wife.
The three of them started chatting, leaving me standing there, stunned. But I didn't miss the way Emma sneered at me. She had clearly aligned herself with Mike and Kyle, asserting that she was in a higher position than me. Emma was someone who seemed charming on the outside, but had all the traits of a woman you'd want to avoid. So, Mike and Emma got married and moved into an apartment not far from ours. Even though she was like that, if Mike could get married and be happy, that would be enough for me. They eventually had a beautiful baby, a healthy baby girl. I thought Mike would need to work even harder from now on, but then something happened that changed everything. It happened one day when I returned home from grocery shopping for dinner. I heard the sound of a baby crying from inside the house. I thought Mike's family must have come over, so I rushed inside. As I expected, Mike, Emma, and their baby girl were there. "Oh, you're here. You should have let me know." Feeling excited, I dropped my bags and ran over to my granddaughter. But then Emma spoke to me in a cold voice.
Oh, who are you again?
"What?" I froze at her words. I couldn't understand what she meant. Mike laughed hysterically at what she said. Then Kyle spoke in a serious tone.
From today, the three of us are moving in together. We don't need outsiders anymore. That's what we decided in the family meeting.
What? Judging by the tone of Kyle's voice, it didn't seem like he was joking.
I don't know who you are, but get out of the house, old lady.
From now on, we're going to work together as a family, so make sure you leave soon. We don't have a room for you anyway.
As they said that, Mike's family made shooing motions with their hands, mocking me.
It was all just a misunderstanding that led to the marriage in the first place.
At that, the three of them burst into laughter again. At that moment, my anger reached its boiling point. No matter what, I didn't deserve to be ridiculed like this. But then I calmed down, and as I looked at the three of them, I found myself laughing too. It's ridiculous to get down to their level, get provoked, and get angry. I'm the one paying $3,300 for living expenses, yet they forget that and kick me out. What on earth do they plan to do from now on? Fine, we're getting a divorce then. I'll leave, just as you said. As I said this, the three of them gave me these creepy, smug grins. I turned around and left the living room, retreating to my room.
Your stuff is trash anyway. Take it all with you.
Kyle yelled from the living room. Without responding, I started quietly packing my things. The next day, I called a moving company. Since it was a weekday during the off-season, they said they could move my stuff later that evening. Please do it as soon as possible. I answered immediately and decided to move out that day. I just wanted to leave this house as soon as possible. I was completely focused on that. As I was busily preparing to leave, Kyle watched me out of the corner of his eye and laughed.
Where does an unemployed old hag think she's going? I might even forgive you if you apologize.
I completely ignored him. I had no reason to apologize, so I didn't see why I should.
I'll be in the way of the move, so I'm heading out to the casino.
After being ignored by me the entire time, Kyle said this and left the house around noon. I thought it would have been nice if he'd at least said thanks for everything, but it's stupid to expect anything from him. All right then, goodbye, I said as I watched Kyle's back as he left the house. A few hours later, the movers arrived and took all my stuff. I contacted the real estate agent, got the keys to my new place, and moved everything in, completing the move. There's still some unpacking to do, but I was relieved that the move was done. Now, I just need to fill out and submit the divorce papers, and I'll finally be free. As I lay down on the couch, feeling liberated, my phone rang. It was Kyle. Hello. As soon as I answered, Kyle's loud voice boomed from the other end of the line.
What the hell is this? What are you thinking?
Startled by his sudden outburst, I pulled the phone away from my ear for a moment. After taking a deep breath, I replied, "What's the matter? Why are you so angry?"
Don't play dumb. What kind of sick joke is this? You took all the furniture and appliances. The house is completely empty.
I was baffled by his words. I slowly looked around the room. All the furniture and appliances I brought from the house were there. But there was nothing strange about that. What's wrong with that? You told me not to leave any of my stuff behind, didn't you?
What?
Yes, All the furniture and appliances I used in that house were bought with my money. In other words, they were my belongings. Did you think they were yours? I bought them with my money and chose them myself. I burst out laughing. Kyle was at a loss for words, gasping on the other end of the line. You probably got cocky because Mike and Emma were there, thinking you could just kick me out. But you really had no clue, did you?
Well, whatever. You can keep the appliances.
Kyle blurted that out in desperation, but I didn't miss it. Wow, I told you it was mine in the first place. Don't get carried away. Kyle fell silent again at my reprimand. I could almost see the look on his face, and it made me want to laugh.
Shut up. Anyway, this is the end of the line for us. Don't ever contact me again.
And with that, he hung up. Even though he was the one who called me in the first place, he probably forgot that because I out-argued him. I couldn't stop laughing and ended up laughing out loud by myself in my new house. I wasn't taking Kyle's desperate, "don't contact me" seriously, but I did need to reach out to him to get the divorce papers signed. As much as it annoyed me, I planned to go back home after picking them up from the courthouse the next day. As I left the courthouse, feeling down, I heard a voice calling my name and stopped in my tracks.
Sophia, I thought it was you.
Christina. It was Christina, someone I used to be close with when I was working part-time. We had only met a few times after I quit, and I hadn't seen her at all in the last few years. But it was great to see her after so long. We decided to grab some coffee and headed to a nearby cafe. After reminiscing about old times, Christina asked,
Did you have some business at the courthouse?
At her question, I ended up telling her everything. How I had fallen for the guy Christina was talking about, married him, and then got kicked out of the house by that husband and his son's family. While I laughed as I told the story, Christina got more upset than I did.
I'm so sorry. It's my fault for telling you such unnecessary things.
She looked apologetic, but I actually felt grateful. Sure, it was a shock when I found out, and back then I was too embarrassed and ashamed to talk about it, but now I'm glad I know. Otherwise, I would have gone through life being taken for a fool. And I meant it. There were times I thought I'd have been happier not knowing, but that's only if Kyle had ever learned from his past mistakes. Given Kyle's personality, if he had stayed in the dark, they probably would have ridiculed him even more. The fact that I can still take action while I'm healthy is thanks to finding out the truth about Kyle back then. By the way, did you have something to do at the courthouse too? She thought for a moment before replying.
It's about my son.
Your son? I thought you had a daughter.
I had another child after I quit the part-time job. I came here today for a free legal consultation about him.
She explained that her son was having trouble with his partner. It just goes to show that every family has its own problems, I thought as we wrapped up our chat and said our goodbyes. When I got back home, my son and his family were there. It looked like they were moving their stuff in.
Hey, you old hag. What's the big idea, taking the furniture and appliances? Are you out of your mind?
They really planned on living here, it seemed. They glared at me as I walked in. Where the big fridge used to be, there was now a tiny one that must have come from their apartment. I couldn't help but laugh at how cute it looked.
What's so funny?
Nothing. Emma snapped at me, probably realizing why I was laughing. I brushed it off and called out to Mike. "Where's your father?"
In the bedroom. The baby's asleep, so don't be loud.
Apparently, according to Mike, Kyle was babysitting his granddaughter. Certainly, when the kids were little, he often took care of them. That was a time when I still felt happy. Thinking about that, I headed to the bedroom. I brought the divorce papers. I'll file them, so just sign. As soon as I entered the bedroom, I said that. Kyle glanced at me, clicked his tongue, and stood up slowly. He had been clipping our grandchild's nails while they slept on the bed.
You ruined my relaxing time, you old hag.
Muttering complaints under his breath, he snatched the divorce papers from me. As I watched Kyle out of the corner of my eye, I leaned in to look at my grandchild's sleeping face. She might be the child of my pathetic son, but she's still my flesh and blood, my grandchild. I wasn't lying when I said I found her adorable. But as I looked down at her with a smile, a chill ran through me. Such a small, cute face. Yet that face looked just like Christina's, whom I had just seen a while ago. Then I remembered what Christina had told me earlier. The trouble with her partner was that
My son's girlfriend got pregnant, lied about getting an abortion, scammed him out of money, and then disappeared.
a few hours ago, I had thought, wow, every family has its problems, when Christina confided in me. But then it hit me. What if it was Emma who scammed Christina's son out of money? That's what I thought. If my hunch was right, this child might not even be Mike's. As I was thinking about this, my face turned pale, and Kyle spoke to me.
Hey, I signed it. Now get out
Yeah,
and take this with you while you're at it. You probably won't be seeing this kid again, so you might as well keep it as a memento.
Kyle handed me the tissue that held the grandchild's nails, along with the divorce papers. I took it silently and immediately left the house. Then, I hurriedly contacted Christina again. A month later, I got a call on my phone. Once again, it was Kyle on the other end.
Hey, there's a notice that the electric and gas bills haven't been paid. What's going on?
His voice was full of anger, lashing out at me as usual. I sighed. I don't know. Pay it yourself.
Where's the money? Where have you been paying it from? Where's the checkbook?
I heard a commotion in the background. He was probably tearing the house apart, trying to find the checkbook. The thought of Kyle panicking made me laugh.
What are you laughing at? Get over here. The house is a mess because of you, and I can't find anything.
Kyle snapped back and then hung up. I wasn't thrilled about it, but I had a reason I needed to meet him. Reluctantly, I picked up the phone and called someone. That evening, I rang the doorbell of the house.
You're late. What the hell were you doing with all your free time?
Kyle must have seen my face on the monitor because he rushed out of the front door. But when he saw the person next to me, he froze.
Who are you?
This is a friend of mine.
Nice to see you again.
Christina deliberately greeted him that way. But Kyle tilted his head in confusion.
You don't remember the face of the girl you hit on, do you?
Christina said with a laugh. I couldn't help but laugh too. Kyle looked uncomfortable and glared at me.
What kind of sick joke is this? Did you bring the woman I hit on to mess with me?
I'm not that childish. I'm here to see Emma. Excuse me. I entered the house with Christina. As expected, the living room was occupied by my eldest son and his wife. They seemed to be very comfortable in the house I no longer lived in. They both looked at me with expressions that clearly said, "Great, here comes trouble," but I didn't want to be there either.
So you're Emma.
Christina looked at Emma's face and spoke.
What? Who are you? A friend of the old lady? What are you bringing strangers into our house for?
Emma sneered at Christina. Christina looked incredulous for a moment, but quickly responded.
I've been looking for you. I couldn't find you because you changed your last name.
Hey, lady, what do you want with Emma?
Mike stood up. Then Christina handed Mike an envelope. He looked puzzled as he pulled out a single document.
Matthew Thomas. What is this? A genetic testing lab.
Mike read the name on the document inside the envelope aloud. Matthew Thomas. That was the name of Christina's son. The moment Emma heard that name, she went pale, stood up, and snatched the document from Mike, along with the envelope.
What the hell, Emma?
You shouldn't be reading someone else's mail.
Her voice was clearly shaken. Emma must have recognized Christina's identity and what the letter was about.
I had a DNA test done between my son and Emma's daughter.
What?
Your child is actually my son's. Unfortunately, there's no blood relation between the child and Mike.
At Christina's words, Mike turned pale and froze. Emma also stood there, completely stunned.
What do you mean?
Kyle, who had been quietly listening, suddenly interjected into our conversation. I smiled and said, I made good use of that nail clipping you gave me from your granddaughter. Yes, just the other day, I handed over that nail clipping, which Kyle had insisted I take, to Christina. And I told her how much the granddaughter looked like her, given how rude and dishonest Emma had been. It wasn't impossible that she had deceived someone to get money for an abortion. Christina discreetly sent a toothbrush belonging to William and the nail clipping I gave her to a lab for testing. And it was confirmed that they were indeed parent and child. However, Christina hadn't yet told her son about this. Christina's son was very concerned about the baby that was likely to be born, and if she told him now, he would not be able to stay put. Before her son could be devastated by any possible outcome, Christina wanted to make sure of the situation herself.
No way. There's no way it's not my child. There must be some mistake.
Upon learning the truth, Mike was devastated.
You got tricked into marrying her, huh? Poor thing. You thought she loved you.
Christina said this to Mike. Those were the same words Emma had said to me. I got tricked into marrying Kyle. The fact that Mike was being told the same thing now made me chuckle at his misfortune.
It wasn't my grandchild.
Kyle, too, seemed shocked as he muttered and collapsed to the ground.
We'll be taking custody of the child. This will likely go to court.
Wait, please, anything but that.
Well, you're going to get divorced soon, right? You don't even have a job. How do you plan to raise a child? Oh, and I'll need the money for the abortion back too.
Emma, now in tears, clung to Christina's arm.
I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Please forgive me.
Christina gently spoke to Emma, as if trying to console her.
You kicked Sophia out and wormed your way into this family with lies. Did you really think you'd be forgiven?
Though her voice was gentle, the coldness in Christina's words left Emma speechless, and she burst into tears. So, what's this about the bank book?
Oh, right.
I turned to Kyle. He was still in shock, his eyes vacant. Before the grandchild was born, Kyle had been so excited, calling it his hope for life. Now that hope was gone. I could understand his shock, but I delivered another harsh reality. You only have the bank book. There's nothing else.
No, that can't be. Then how have we been paying the bills? Utilities? There's a household account, right?
I've been covering the living expenses, $3,300 every month. Of course, I have no intention of doing that anymore. My words made Mike lift his head. Kyle, clearly distressed, looked around in confusion.
$3,300 every month?
Kyle sounded shocked, as if he had never known. Yes, you didn't know? Well, you were spending it however you pleased. Kyle gazed up at the sky, possibly reflecting on his actions. Maybe he thought he hadn't been caught. He probably didn't realize that the money he freely spent was all going to gambling, and when he ran out, he would secretly dip into the grocery money. It wasn't just once or twice that the money I set aside for bills went missing. Did you really think you hadn't been caught? Your wastefulness has been driving up our living costs. In response to my words, Kyle raised his voice defensively.
Even if that's true, there was a bank book with my bonus saved up, right?
You took that years ago and spent it all on gambling, remember? You really don't remember? Kyle's face showed a sudden realization. He probably forgot, and still thought the money was there. I sighed in exasperation. I didn't say anything, but I've been covering all our living expenses from my own money. Did you really kick me out without realizing how much you've depended on me? You better live with that regret.
Don't lie to me. How could a poor person like you have that kind of money?
Kyle, unable to accept the truth, yelled at me. There was no point in continuing this conversation. Believe what you want. I'm done. I then turned to Mike. And you, Mike.
What?
Mike, still devastated by the news about Emma and the daughter, looked at me with vacant eyes. You keep hopping from one part-time job to another, not contributing to the household expenses. You've been living off my money, and now that you've kicked me out, have you thought about what happens next? Your dad's savings are gone. He's still working, but given his age, How much longer do you think that'll last? Finally, understanding the gravity of the situation, Mike began to tremble as if he'd seen a ghost. Maybe you thought you could save on living expenses by moving back in here, like when you were single. But now that you've kicked me out, if you think things will be the same, you're about to see hell. No one responded after that. Only Christina, satisfied, patted me on the shoulder. I, too, was content to have said what I needed to and spoke to her. Shall we head home?
Yes. Emma, I'll contact you later.
As I was about to leave with Christina, Mike called out to me.
Mom, where are you living now? Living alone must be tough. Why don't you come back home?
A forced smile appeared on his face. It's been decades since I was called Mom. He's clearly trying to get on my good side. Seeing through his obvious ulterior motive, I responded with a slight smile and a hint of sarcasm. Not at all. I'm living in a high-rise apartment now. It's much more comfortable than here.
A high-rise apartment?
Yes, I bought it for $1 million. Don't worry, if anything happens to me, I've arranged for it to go to Nancy, so you won't be bothered. Mike and Kyle exchanged glances at that figure. Kyle stared at me, forgetting even to blink.
$1 million apartment. Where did you get that kind of money? Could you really be rich?
Christina tilted her head in confusion at his words.
Doesn't your family know you're a best-selling author?
No, I didn't tell them. They would have just made fun of me.
I see. Looks like the fish that got away was a whale.
As Christina and I laughed together, both Kyle and Mike stopped me, their expressions changing.
Sophia, I was wrong. You've been working so hard, doing such an amazing job. I deeply regret not understanding that. Please, won't you come back home?
Their sudden change in attitude was disgusting, almost making me feel sick. In an instant, they switched to a pleading tone, practically begging me.
Mom, you must be incredible to afford a place like that. Please, come back home. If that's not possible, could you at least help with living expenses? I'm begging you. I was just tricked by that woman, you know. Isn't that pitiful?
As Mike said this, he pointed at Emma, who looked shocked but seemed too drained to argue. She just sat there beside her sleeping child, unmoving. Though I felt a twinge of pity for her, it was her own doing, and I had no intention of helping. Yes, it is pitiful to be tricked into marriage. I turned back to Mike and said,
So,
"That's why you need to handle it yourself. It's your fault for getting tricked." With those words, I finally pushed Kyle and Mike away. They seemed to realize I had truly abandoned them, and in shock. They both collapsed onto the sofa. Well then, goodbye. I cheerfully said my farewell and left the house. This was a family that never cared about me. Even when I mentioned I'd bought something, they didn't believe me and treated me like I was poor. When I told them I worked from home, they laughed at me, saying, "Working from home, that's not real work." They didn't know I was a novelist or that I had invested in real estate with my royalties. Even if they praised my work now, it meant nothing to me, and I wanted nothing to do with them. Emma, who had deceived people and driven me out, and Kyle and Mike, who had lost everything, their family, their money, and their hope due to their arrogance. I couldn't help but laugh inside, thinking they were all alike. Later, Emma and Mike got divorced. Emma was kicked out of the house, but, with nowhere to go, was allowed to stay temporarily. Neither Kyle nor Mike could abandon the small baby, despite everything. Emma must be living there now, feeling out of place. In the end, Mike quit his job again. He seemed to think he no longer had any obligation to support a wife or child, conveniently forgetting that he now had to take care of his father. I wonder how those two will survive in that house with no money. I hope they live their lives reflecting on their actions. Later, Christina and her son, Eric, filed a lawsuit against Emma and won custody of their daughter. Eric, though an unmarried father, thanked me in tears for helping him win custody. Christina was also excited about raising her child from scratch. Seeing someone motivated at this age is something I envy, but it also made me realize I need to work hard too, so I opened my laptop. Maybe I'll write a new story about a woman who's tricked into marriage, but makes a grand comeback and finds happiness. As I admired the night view from my beautiful apartment, that's what I decided to do.